Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling a topic suggested by one of you, Beam.
That's right.
And no, not beaming anyone up, Scotty, but a next-gen crypto focusing heavily on privacy, something we hear more and more about.
Absolutely. And you gave us some great sources to work with. We've got the position paper, white paper info, the website itself covering mining, price, even gaming stuff.
Gaming. Interesting.
Yeah, plus the GitHub repository and a general what is Beam article. So our plan is basically to sift through all this and pull out the really key, interesting bits for everyone listening.
Okay, let's do it. So Beam. The core seems to be this Mimblewimble protocol. Sounds whimsical.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? But yeah, the sources, especially the position paper, really talk up its elegance and how innovative it is.
Elegant how?
Well, fundamentally, it lets you hide transaction amounts completely, but, and this is the clever part, the whole system can still be verified, and it avoids that massive blockchain bloat you see elsewhere.
Ah, so privacy without crippling the network size. That is neat.
Exactly. Core details stay private, but performance doesn't tank.
Okay, that sounds like a big deal. What else makes Beam stand out from, the hundreds of other coins?
Well, a huge point they stress is user control over privacy. You decide who sees what. That's key. It's about user choice, but also, following relevant laws.
Makes sense. Control is good.
And another thing, from a security angle, no trusted setup. This is important. It means the initial system parameters weren't created by some central group that could be compromised. Adds a layer of robustness, you could say.
No single point of failure at the start. I like that. How does new Beam actually get made then? Mining.
Yep, proof of work. They use an algorithm called Equihash, specifically, BeamHash III, which is like a tweaked version.
Equihash, I've heard of that one.
Yeah, it's known for needing a good chunk of memory, RAM, on the miner's computer to solve the puzzles. Helps secure things, releases new Beam.
And is there a limit, like Bitcoin?
There is. Total supply is capped around 250 million Beam. And yeah, like Bitcoin, it has periodic halvings where the rate of new coins getting mined gets cut in half.
Okay, built-in scarcity. Cool. Now, something caught my eye about addresses. The sources said they aren't stored on the blockchain? How does that work?
Exactly. That's a core privacy feature. The sender, the receiver. Their info isn't publicly logged on the chain. Big difference from most cryptos where you can trace funds between public addresses.
Huh. So how do you know where the money went?
Well, but the public ledger doesn't. And it ties into another Mimblewimble trick called cut-through.
Cut-through?
Yeah, imagine Alice pays Bob, Bob pays Carol. Mimblewimble can essentially squash that on the blockchain, so it just looks like Alice paid Carol directly.
Whoa.
The result, a much leaner blockchain. It doesn't need the whole messy history, just the current state of who holds what the UTXOs or unspent transaction outputs. Think of it like only needing to know everyone's current balance, not every single transaction that led to it.
So the blockchain stays compact, even though it's always growing.
Precisely. Compact in terms of the data needed for validation and proving you own some Beam. You just need the value and your unique secret key, your blinding factor. No need for those public addresses to be forever on the blockchain. Just a cryptographic commitment gets recorded.
Okay, commitment. But how do you stop people from just making up money if values are hidden?
Ah, good question.
Yeah.
That's where zero-knowledge range proofs come in. Each transaction has one. It's this clever crypto method that proves the transaction amount is positive. You're not creating coins from nothing, but it does it without revealing the actual number.
Wow, okay, that's sophisticated. So Mimblewimble handles hiding values and shrinking the validation data. But the sources also mentioned LelantusMW. What's that at?
Right, LelantusMW. This tackles another layer of privacy because, the position paper points out, even if months are hidden, people thought Bitcoin was anonymous at first, right?
Yeah, but then chain analysis became a thing.
Exactly. Blockchain analysis got really good. Experts can track patterns, link transactions to exchanges, maybe figure out who's who. Once you're linked to one address, potentially your whole history, past and future, is exposed on that public ledger.
Not very private then. So LelantusMW helps break those links.
Precisely. Mimblewimble gives a great base. LelantusMW adds another tool. It lets users effectively pool their coins in a way that obscures the original source when they're withdrawn. Think of it like a privacy shield for your transaction history. It makes tracing funds much harder.
So it breaks the chain of custody, so to speak.
Kind of, yeah. And the key thing on Beam is this isn't some optional feature you have to turn on. All transactions use these protocols. Privacy is the default. Yeah. Fully confidential.
Default privacy. That's a statement. Okay, let's switch gears slightly to the tech side again. That Equihash mining. What pick that specific algorithm? Any particular reason mentioned?
The paper suggests it was chosen because it's pretty well established, has a decent track record, and technically it's described as IO-bound.
IO-bound.
Meaning it heavily relies on memory, speed, and capacity, not just raw processing power. The idea is it makes it harder for specialized hardware, like ASICs that dominate Bitcoin mining, to completely take over mining, at least initially. Levels the playing field a bit, maybe.
Okay, aims for broader participation. Now, back to that compact blockchain idea. Just to be crystal clear, data isn't actually deleted, right? Because that would break the whole blockchain concept.
Right. The FAQ is very clear. No data is ever deleted. It's immutable. Compact refers to what a new person joining the network needs to download to get up to speed and verify everything.
Oh, okay.
Because of that cut-through feature, they don't need every single transaction from day one. They can grab the block headers and the current list of UTXOs, the current state, and verify the whole chain's integrity from that. Much faster, less data.
Gotcha. So the full history is implicitly there, verified by the current state, but you don't need to download gigabytes and gigabytes of old intermediate transactions just to sync up.
Yeah. Exactly. Efficiency for storage, efficiency for new nodes joining, which leads to transaction speed. How fast is Beam?
Yeah, what did the sources say about that? Can it handle, like, coffee purchases?
The Q&A section addresses this. They don't give hard numbers, transactions per second, that kind of thing. They suggest it's probably a bit better than Bitcoin, maybe other privacy coins.
What?
They're pretty clear its main goal isn't high-frequency payments. It's positioned more as a store of value, privacy and security first.
So digital gold, but private.
Kind of, yeah. They do hint that maybe future upgrades, second-layer solutions, maybe something like Lightning, though they don't name it, could boost speeds later on. But for now, focus is store of value.
Okay, clear positioning. So if it's a store of value, what else can you do in the Beam ecosystem besides just hold it?
Now this is where the website info gets really interesting. They support confidential assets.
Confidential assets, like creating your own tokens on Beam.
Exactly. Anyone can create their own digital assets, their own tokens on the Beam blockchain. And these assets automatically get the same privacy features as regular Beam.
So private tokens running on a private chain.
Yes. And the really cool part, transactions using these confidential assets look identical to regular Beam transactions on the network. Indistinguishable.
Wow, that has implications. Private stablecoins, maybe even confidential stocks or bonds down the line.
Precisely the kind of potential it unlocks. And to trade these things, they have a confidential DEX.
A decentralized exchange, but private.
Yep. Think Uniswap, but for Beam and its confidential assets, plus assets bridged from other chains. It uses an AM automated market maker model, and it supports atomic swaps.
Atomic swaps, meaning direct trades with other coins.
Right. Direct peer-to-peer, trustless swaps with coins like Bitcoin, Litecoin, QDAM Dash, even Dogecoin, all within this private environment.
Okay, that's a powerful combo. Private assets, private trading, even swapping with major public coins.
Yeah.
What about smart contracts? Can you build apps?
They've got that too. Confidential smart contracts. These run on the Beam virtual machine, the BVM. It uses WASM, WebAssembly, for execution.
WASM is pretty popular, seems versatile.
It is. And they talk about splitting things into contract shaders, that's the core logic, and app shaders, which handle the user interface part. Makes building user-friendly private apps potentially easier.
Private dApps. The mind boggles. But how easy is it for an actual person, like a non-developer, to use Beam day-to-day wallets?
Good point. They seem to have focused on usability there. User-friendly wallets available for desktop Mac, Windows, Linux, and mobile, Android, and iOS.
It covers all the bases.
And they mention two main ways to transact. There are interactive ones, where the sender and receiver wallets need a quick handshake to set up the private transfer.
Okay, a bit more involved.
And then there are simpler send and forget transactions, more like how you'd send Bitcoin. Probably more convenient sometimes. Offers flexibility.
Right, catering to different needs. It really sounds like they're building blocks for a whole private financial system.
That definitely seems to be the vision painted by the white paper and website. They talk explicitly about confidential DeFi, private NFTs.
Private NFTs, how would that even work?
Good question. The details aren't fully fleshed out in these sources, but the intent is there. Private stablecoins, private AMMs like the DEX, and hinting at future stuff, private lending, privacy-preserving oracles, side chains, wrapped assets, all confidential.
Privacy seems to be the watchword everywhere. Now, you mentioned bridging assets. I saw Beam has connections to Ethereum. Why bridge to a public chain?
interoperability, basically.
Oh, yeah.
Connecting to other ecosystems. Ethereum is, the biggest playground for DeFi and dApps.
Sure.
So these bridges let popular Ethereum assets like USDT, DAI, wrapped BTC, Ether itself move onto the Beam chain and benefit from its privacy. And vice versa. They have wrapped Beam, WBeam, which is an ERC20 token on Ethereum.
So Beam can play in Ethereum's sandbox, and Ethereum assets can get some privacy on Beam. Makes sense.
Exactly. It expands the possibilities, lets value flow between the chains.
Okay. The website also mentioned a move to DAO governance. BeamX DAO. What's the deal there?
DAO, Decentralized Autonomous Organization. It's about shifting control to the community. Beam is transitioning or planning to transition to this model. They'll use on-chain voting with a separate BMX token.
So token holders get to vote on the project's future.
That's the idea. Proposals, upgrades, funding. The community gets a direct say, decentralizing the decision-making.
More community control. Okay. Now, this is where I got a bit confused looking through everything. One article from coins.ph described Beam completely differently. It talked about Beam being a gaming platform built as an Avalanche subnet.
Ah, yes. You picked up on a really crucial and potentially confusing point there.
It sounded like a totally different project. It even mentioned a token supply in the billions, over 30 billion, compared to the 250 million we just talked about.
You're absolutely right. It seems there are two distinct projects using the Beam name and ticker. The one we've mostly discussed, Mimblewimble, LelantusMW, privacy, DeFi, the 260M supply is consistent across the position paper, the main beam.mw site, the white paper database entry, GitHub.
But this other article paints a picture of Beam as a gaming chain on Avalanche.
Exactly. A completely different focus, different technology base, different tokenomics. That article talks about Beam tokens being used for gas in games, staking for validation on the Avalanche subnet, governance within that gaming ecosystem, and as in-game currency.
That's weird and potentially very confusing for people. Do the sources explain this? Like, did one pivot? Or are they unrelated?
No, the sources we have don't explicitly reconcile this. There's no clear explanation for why there are two seemingly separate projects with very different goals and tech, sharing the name and ticker. It's a significant ambiguity.
Definitely something listeners need to be aware of if they're researching or looking to get involved with Beam. You need to know which Beam you're looking at.
Absolutely. Critical distinction.
Okay, well, let's refocus on the confidential DeFi project for a moment then. What were some key moments for that Beam?
Well, the big one was the main launch, January 3rd, 2019. That's when the blockchain went live.
Okay, so it's been around a few years.
Yeah. Being open source, code on GitHub, that's important too. Shows transparency. We mentioned the emission schedule, starting at 100 Beam per block, the halvings, the cap supply around 262.8 million for this project.
Right.
The Beam Foundation Limited was set up early on for governance, now evolving towards that BeamX DAO. And they do community stuff like hackathon. There was a BeamX Noster summer hackathon mentioned. Plus active Telegram groups, a forum, and a blockchain explorer to see what's happening on the network.
So active development, community outreach, clear tokenomics for the privacy coin.
Got it. Now the practical side price,
Yeah.
mining. Can people still mine this Beam?
Okay, pulling from that CoinMarketCap data you provided. At that time, the price was hovering around 0.027774 USD.
Market cap listed around $4.18 million. Daily volume about $132,700. Circulating supply was about 150.75 million. Out of that max, 262.8 million for this version.
And mining. Still possible.
Yes, CoinMarketCap confirmed it can be mined using BeamHash III, that modified equihash. It even listed some mining software like LawMiner and GMiner. The main beam.mw website also has a dedicated mining section with guides.
So if someone wants to support this network and earn Beam, mining with a GPU is an option.
Seems so, yeah.
All right, well, this has certainly been a deep dive. We've looked at Beam, primarily the one focused on privacy via Mimblewimble and LelantusMW. Confidential transactions, confidential assets, a scalable design thanks to cut through.
Right, a growing ecosystem too, with the DEX smart contract potential,
Yeah.
moving towards DAO governance.
Though due with the significant caveat that there appears to be another project using the same Beam ticker, focused entirely on gaming within the Avalanche ecosystem, with vastly different tech and tokenomics.
A crucial point of potential confusion we uncovered in the sources.
Absolutely. So that leads us to a final thought for everyone listening. As digital privacy becomes, frankly, ever more critical, how might technologies like Mimblewimble and LelantusMW, the core of this confidential DeFi Beam, reshape crypto and DeFi as we know it?
And perhaps just as importantly, what does it mean for users, for the market, when you have potentially different projects sharing the same identity like this. What are the challenges that creates?
Lots to think about. We definitely encourage you to check out the resources yourselves, explore these privacy technologies further, and, well, be mindful of which Beam you're looking at if you delve deeper.
Indeed. Thanks for joining us on this exploration.